Good evening, Instagram. Hope you are well. It's Faye here, ready for the last instalment of The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. Hope you are all well. Give us a wave and a thumbs up and a heart. Hi, Kimmy. Hi, Danny. I'm just going to start live with Facebook as well. There we go. Hello, hello, hello. There we go. How are you all doing? Are you good? Are you well? Have you had a lovely day? It's been beautiful and sunny again. Hi Facebook, how are you doing? Give us a thumbs up and a hello. And let me know who is on board. As I say, it's the last one. Hi Judy, hi Emma, hi Steps Funny 5278. Hi Martin and Emma Louise. Thank you everybody for coming to join me on this last instalment. I've really enjoyed doing bedtime stories for Home Festival Fun. Hi Lauren, and who's that? Latina Marana, rara. The weather has been incredible today. Hi guys, Sarah, Carrie, Judy, how you doing? You lot, you good? Yeah, this is the last instalment tonight. No more bedtime stories after this from me. I'm going to just have a little bit of time off next week. I've got some other projects that I'm doing. So I'm not going to be doing lives next week either, I don't think. But we'll see. We'll see how the week pans out. I've been good today. We've been very productive at home, getting some jobs done that needed to be done, which has been good. And trying to be a little bit healthy this week because we've been enjoying the food and drink a little bit too much. So it's like reining it in so we can enjoy the weekend again. How about you guys? Hi, Tina and Delia and Yvette and Becca. Hi guys. Lovely to see everybody here tonight. We've got Phenomenal, that's Stephen, isn't it? And Fandango and Mike, all these lovely people. Superb. Right then. So we are on to the last chapter of The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. Can you believe it? Oh my goodness. So where did we get to? Hi Becca. It is so hot, Sarah, isn't it? It's been really hot today. I think it's going to be just as hot tomorrow, if not more. You ate too much ice cream, Emma. I know, right? Actually, I'm not going to lie. I'm going to have a little bit of ice cream tonight, but, you know, not too much. Someone was saying, while we've been in lockdown, it's, what is it? Distortion portions, because we're all in a bit of a strange place. I thought that was quite a good little saying. Anyway, it's time to chill down. Have we got Harlow on tonight? Little Harlow that sang us the song. We'll see if she is. Give us a wave if you're here, Harlow. And yeah, nice. So yeah, we're chilling down. It's time for the last instalment of The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. And thank you so much for joining me all these times. It's been really fun and putting up with my reading as well. Oh, okay, are we ready? Are we sitting in the garden at the moment? Someone was sitting in the garden in the shade. I was having a little practice of my reading earlier in the garden. It was lovely. Okay, are we ready then? I'm going to do it. We're going to start it. It's chapter 17, the last chapter of The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. Now, if you remember, Aslan had come back from the dead. He'd cracked the table of stone, come back from the dead with the girls, but then as Aslan and all the good guys came over the hills and through back to Narnia, they came to find the White Witch, and this is what was going on. The battle was over a few minutes before their arrival. Most of the enemy had been killed in the first charge of Aslan and his companions, and those who were still living saw that the witch was dead. Either they gave themselves up or took flight. The next thing that Lucy knew was that Peter and Aslan were shaking hands. It was strange to her to see Peter looking as he looked now. His face was so pale and stern, and he seemed so much older. It was all Edmund's doing, Aslan, Peter was saying. Would have been beaten if it hadn't been for him. The witch was turning our troops into stone left and right, but nothing would stop him. He fought his way through 3 ogres to where she was just turning one of your leopards into a statue. When he reached her, he had the sense to bring down his sword, smashing down on her wand instead of trying to go for her directly and simply being made a statue himself for his pains. That was the mistake all the rest were making. Once her wand was broken, we began to have some chance. If we hadn't lost so many already. He was terribly wounded. We must go and see him. They found Edmund in the charge of Mrs. Beaver, a little way back from the fighting line. He was covered with blood, and his mouth was open, and his face was a nasty green colour. "Quick, Lucy," said Aslan, and then, almost for the first time, Lucy remembered the precious cordial that she'd been given for her Christmas present. Her hands trembled so much she could hardly undo the stopper, but she managed it in the end and poured a few drops into her brother's mouth. "There are other wounded people," said Aslan, while she was still looking eagerly into Edmund's pale face and wondering if the cordial would have any result. "Yes, I know," said Lucy crossly. "Wait a minute, daughter of Eve," said Aslan in a graver voice. "Others are also at the point of death. Must more people die for Edmund?" "I'm sorry, Aslan," said Lucy, getting up and going with him. And for the next half hour they were busy. She was attending to the wounded while he restored those who had been turned to stone. When at last she was free to come back to Edmund, she found him standing on his feet and not only healed of his wounds, but looking better than she'd seen him look for ages. In fact, ever since his first term at that horrid school, which was where he had begun to go wrong. He looked like his old self again. He could look you in the face. And there on the field of battle, Aslan made him a knight. "Does he know," whispered Lucy to Susan, "what Aslan did for him? Does he know what arrangement he made with the witch?" "Hush, no, of course not," said Susan. "Oughtn't he be told?" said Lucy. "Oh, surely not," said Susan. "It would be too awful for him. Think how you'd feel if you were he." "All the same, I think he ought to know," said Lucy. But at that moment they were interrupted. The night they slept where they were. How Aslan provided food for them, I don't know, but somehow or other they found themselves all sitting down in the grass to a fine high tea at about 8 o'clock. The next day they began marching eastward down the side of the great river. And the next day after that, at about tea time, they actually reached the mouth. The castle of Cair Paravel on its little hill towered up above them. Before them were the sands with rocks and pools of salt water and seaweed and the smell of the sea and long miles of bluish green waves breaking for ever and ever on the beach. And oh, the cry of the seagulls. Have you heard it? Can you remember? That evening after tea, the 4 children all managed to get down to the beach again and get their shoes and stockings off and feel the sand between their toes. But the next day was more solemn, for then in the great hall of Cair Paravel, that wonderful hall with the ivory roof and the west hall hung with peacock's feathers and the eastern door which looks out towards the sea, in the presence of all their friends and to the sound of trumpets, Aslan solemnly crowned them and led them to the 4 thrones, amid the deafening shouts of "Long live King Peter! Long live Queen Susan! Long live King Edmund! Long live Queen Lucy!" And once a queen or king in Narnia, always a king or queen. "Bear it well, sons of Adam, bear it well, daughters of Eve," said Aslan. And through the eastern door, which was wide open, came the voices of mermen, and the mermaids swimming close to the shore and singing in honour of their new kings and queens. So the children sat on their thrones, and the sceptres were put into their hands, and they gave rewards and honours to all their friends, to Mr. Tumnus the Fawn, and to the beavers, and to Giant Rumblebuffin, to the leopards, and to the good centaurs, the good dwarves, and to the lion. And that night there was a great feast in Cair Paravel. The revelry and dancing, and gold flashed, and wine flowed, and answering to the music inside, but stranger and sweeter and more piercing came the music of the sea people. But amidst all these rejoicings, Aslan himself quietly slipped away And when the kings and queens noticed that he wasn't there anymore, they said nothing about it. For Mr. Beaver had warned them. "He'll be coming and going," he said. "One day you'll see him and another you won't. He doesn't like being tied down, and of course he has other countries to tend to. It's quite all right. He'll often drop in. Only you mustn't press him. He's wild, you know, not like a tame lion." And now, as you see, the story is nearly but not quite at an end. These two kings and queens governed Narnia well, and long and happy was their reign. At first, much of their time was spent in seeking out the remnants of the White Witch's army and destroying them. And indeed, for a long time, there would be news of evil things lurking in the wilder parts of the forest, a haunting here and a killing there, a glimpse of a werewolf one month and a rumour of a hag the next. But in the end, all that foul brood was stamped out, and they made good laws and kept the peace, and saved the good trees from becoming unnecessarily cut down, and liberated young dwarves and young satyrs from being sent to school, and generally stopped busybodies and interferers, and encouraged ordinary people who wanted to live and let live. And they drove back the fierce giants, quite different sort from the giant Rumblebuffin in the north of Narnia when these ventured across the frontier. And they entered into friendship and alliance with countries beyond the sea, and paid them visits of state, and received visits of state from them. And they themselves grew and changed as the years passed over them. And Peter became tall and deep-chested, and a great warrior, and he was called King Peter the Magnificent. And Susan grew into a tall and gracious woman with black hair that fell almost to her feet. And the kings of the countries beyond the sea began to send ambassadors asking for her hand in marriage, and she was called Queen Susan the Gentle. Edmund was a graver and quieter man than Peter, and great in counsel and judgment. He was called King Edmund the Just. But as for Lucy, she was always gay and golden-haired, and all the princes in those parts desired her to be their queen, and her own people called her Queen Lucy the Valiant. So they lived in great joy, and if ever they remembered their life in this world, it was only as one remembers a dream. And one year it fell out that Tumnus, who was a middle-aged faun by now and beginning to become stout, came down the river and brought them the news that the white stag had once more appeared in these parts. The white stag who would give you wishes if you caught them. So these two kings and two queens, with the principal members of their court, rode a-hunting with horns and hounds in the western woods to follow the white stag. And they had not hunted long before they had a sight of him, and he led them a great pace over rough and smooth, through thick and thin, till the horses of all courtiers were tired out, and these four were still following. And they saw the stag enter into a thicket where the horses could not follow. Then said King Peter, for they talk quite differently, now being kings and queens, "Fair consorts, let us now alight from our horses and follow this beast into the thicket, for in all my days I never hunted a nobler quarry." "Sir," said the others, "even so let us do." So they alighted and tied up their horses to trees and went into the thick wood on foot. And as soon as they had entered it, Queen Susan said, "Fair friends, here is a marvel, for I seem to see a tree of iron." "Madam," said King Edmund, "if you look well upon it, you shall see it is a pillar of iron with a lantern set top on thereof." "By the lion's mane, a strange device," said King Peter, "to set a lantern here where the trees cluster so thick about it and so high about it. If it were lit, it should give light to no man." "Sir," said Queen Lucy, "by likelihood, when this post and this lamp were set here, there were smaller trees in the place, or fewer or none, for this is a young wood, and the iron post is old." And they stood there looking upon it. Then said King Edmund, "I do not know how it is, but this lamp on the post worketh upon me strangely. It runs in my mind that I have seen the like before, as it were a dream, or a dream in a dream. Sir, answered they all, it is even so with us also, and more, said Queen Lucy, for it will not go out of my mind that if we pass this post and lantern, either we shall find strange adventures, or else some great change of our fortunes. Madam, said King Edmund, the like foreboding stirreth in my heart also, and in mine, fair brother, said King Peter, and in mine too, said Queen Susan, wherefore by my counsel we shall lightly return to our horses and follow this white stag no further. Madam, said King Peter, therein I pray thee to have me excused, for never since we four were kings and queens in Narnia have we set our hands to any high matter as battles, quests, feats of arms, acts of justice, and the likes, and then given over, but always what we have taken in hand, the same we have achieved. Sister, said Queen Lucy, my royal brother speaks rightly, and it seems to me we should be shamed for any fearing or foreboding we turned back from the following so noble a beast as we now have in chase. And so say I, said King Edmund, and I have such a desire to find the signification of this thing that I would not by good will turn back for the richest jewel in all Narnia and all the islands. Then, in the name of Aslan, said Queen Susan, if ye will all have it so, let us go on and take the adventure where it shall fall to us. So these kings and queens entered the thicket, and before they had gone a score of paces, they remembered that that thing they had seen was called a lamppost. And before they had gone 20 more, they noticed that they were making their way not through branches, but through coats. And the next moment, they all came tumbling out of the wardrobe door into the empty room, and they were no longer kings and queens in their hunting array, but just Peter, Susan, Edmund and Lucy in all their old clothes. It was the same day and the same hour of the day which they had all gone into the wardrobe to hide. Mrs. Macready and the visitors were still talking in the passage, but luckily they never came into the empty room, and so the children weren't caught. And that would have been the very end of the story if it hadn't been that they felt they must explain to the professor why the 4 coats out of his wardrobe were missing. And the professor, who was a very remarkable man, didn't tell them not to be silly or not to tell lies, but believed the whole story. No, he said, I don't think it would be any good trying to go back through the wardrobe door to get the coats. You won't get into Narnia again by that route, nor would the coats be much use by now if you did. Eh? What's that? Yes, of course you'll get back to Narnia again someday. Once a king in Narnia, always a king in Narnia. But don't go trying to use the same route twice. Indeed, don't try to get there at all. It'll happen when you're not looking for it. And don't talk too much about it, even amongst yourselves. And don't mention it to anyone else, unless you find they've had adventures of the same sort themselves. What's that? How will you know? Oh, you'll know all right. Odd things they say. Even their looks will let the secret out. Keep your eyes open. Bless me, what do they teach in these schools? And that is the very end of the adventure of the wardrobe. But if the professor was right, it was only the beginning of the adventures in Narnia. And there we go. That's the end. A very short one tonight. That's the end of chapter 17 and the end of The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. My goodness, can you believe it's all over? Oh, thank you so much for coming and joining me on the stories, the bedtime stories this month. It's been so much fun for me to have something to focus on myself in these strange times, and it's been really great having this bedtime story gang. It's made me feel really nice, and it's nice to have a little bit of escapism and yeah, just great fun. So thank you guys, and I also want to thank Karen, David and Oti and Marius for asking me to come on as a guest for bedtime stories. Lots and lots of love to you all. Send me messages tonight and I'll make sure that I get you lots of messages back. I will be going over again today over to my Instagram page, which is Faye Tozer Smith. And I'll do some lives over there just to say hi and see who's around. But I've really enjoyed it, so thanks so much fun. Lots and lots of love to you all. And that's me signing off. Bedtime stories out. Thank you. And thank you, Instagram. It's been really sweet, hasn't it? Proper cute. Thank you.
Are you good?
I'm going to turn that off over there, and I'm going to go straight over to Instagram straight away tonight because it's going to be a slightly shorter session. So lots of love, and I shall see you over on that side.